Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there on the radio, live video portion, podcast, however you get Computer America into your lives. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully everyone out there is having a wonderful day, and we are ready for some Computer America. So today, the entire show is dedicated to computer and technology news. And there you go. So everyone, welcome into the program. So with that being said, thank you for joining us, and computeramerica.com first and foremost. If you want to check out anything that we do here at Computer America, be sure to check out our website. We have a new review up of the Glance wall clock. It's a smart connected wall clock. If you thought, well, how do you make a clock better? I think they did a really good job. So check that out. That review has been up for a couple of days now, and we should have another one coming up here shortly. But in the meantime, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And let's go ahead and get started with computer and technology news. And this is a segment dedicated entirely and completely dedicated to catching up on computer, just the latest stuff, because we spend all day looking at this stuff, and we can't imagine, if you actually had a life, how hard it would be to kind of stay connected. So we do the legwork for you. Everyone, computer and technology news brought to you by Computer America. All right, everyone. So lots and lots of stories. Like, I haven't even gone through all of the publications that we, kind of pick through and check out. But hey, why don't we go ahead and just start with some of the ones that these happened like in the past couple of days. But obviously, yesterday's show with Scott Schober, very, very fun. Go check that out if you didn't catch that yesterday. And Tuesday, we spent the entire day talking about social media. If you want to, it was our attempt to tackle the question: is social media good or bad, or something that you should get into? And hey, it took an hour plus to actually get through it. So not going to summarize that there, but just want to say we haven't done computer and technology news for a couple of days. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these. And you may have heard about them before, but I wanted to touch on them. And the first one deals with Apple. And Tim Cook kind of making a misleading statement. And I really wanted to draw attention to this because it's not quite the case. So the headline here, this coming to us from Business Insider, and it's all about Tim Cook's statement about Apple and how they do not donate money to political candidates, and they refuse to use PACs because, as he says, quote, they should not exist. Well, there's some thing about this. So, and obviously Tim Cook is speaking for himself and for Apple. Apple does not give political donations, obviously, things like that. But here's the thing. They do lobby. They just don't give the money directly to to political candidates. They give it to lawyers and lobbying groups who will actually spend the money for Apple so that they get their own, so that they get their own way. And to kind of highlight this, they have. They've given a lot of money, and I can pull something up here real quick. Sorry, everyone, for doing this kind of on the fly, but by the way, all this will be in the show notes if you want to check it out yourself. Here we go. OpenSecrets.org. OpenSecrets, if you haven't heard about it, it's an institute completely dedicated to showing lobbying dollars from different organizations, different companies, and trying to bring transparency to campaign financing. And OpenSecrets, you can see here, Apple Inc., well, yeah, that's who we're talking about. And actually, over the past couple of years, and this particular graph that we're looking at goes back to 1998. Yeah, they've been spending more than ever on campaign lobbying. It's just that they, in turn, only spend it on these particular firms. So again, while Apple, yes, indeed, does not spend money directly, as per Tim Cook's quote, they don't spend any money on political candidates. But what they do spend money on are these lobbying firms, including Capital Tax Partners, Fierce Government Relations, Franklin Square Group, Glover Park Group, and the DLA Piper Group. So all those sum total come out to about $1.3 million, and then of course they can lobby the industry, the manufacturing and electronics industry, where they have lobbied about $7 million. So obviously this has been, that's just for 2018. You can go back to every year prior to that and see where they actually spent their money and how much money they spent. But it's something that I wanted to bring up because, again, Tim Cook had this article, I assume Apple placed this article, saying that they don't spend any money. So in comparison to that, you could, they highlight things like Google has a PAC that spent $2.2 million. The money was raised by individuals who work at Google and others. Facebook has a PAC that's donated over $700,000. And while Apple doesn't provide a vehicle for itself and its employees to donate virtually limitless amounts of money to political campaigning, that doesn't mean it's not spending cash to exert influence in Washington, as we just mentioned. And so there you go. Apple's focus in Washington is to weigh in on issues that where we have a standing. He said, explaining that they focus on areas that could impact the company and where he feels the company has a valid point of view. Saying, quote, "We focus on policies, not politics, and I recognize that everything, unfortunately these days, tends to break down in that way, but we focus on the policy itself and not the politics." So there you go. We'll include both of these links in the show notes, but just wanted to, again, kind of really highlight that you can see these statements, and Business Insider, very, very trusted organization. There's, I don't know many people out there who would completely doubt Business Insider as soon as they see something, but the headline does not match the content, I guess. So wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Okay, so there's that one. This one also was published, actually, wow, way too long ago. We're not even going to bring that up. So ignore story number 2. Story number 3. This is one that we've actually talked about on the show before in not so many words. Huawei. If you haven't heard of them, Huawei, however you want to say the name, they're a Chinese tech company. And you may recall recently the U.S. extradited the CEO's daughter for bypassing sanctions on Iran to sell them printers and copiers and other office material, things like that. The point is, our relationship with Huawei and by extension the Chinese government, which has a huge role to play in really all huge corporations in China, it's been on rocky ground for quite a while now. But this is another highlight that we want to show, that Huawei tried to explain who owns the company. And it turns out, as the article mentions, it got a little complicated, where you could say, obviously, anything here in the U.S., you could point to who incorporated the corporation, who the shareholders are, who the stockholders are, so on and so forth. And turns out for Huawei, not that simple. Now, as the Chinese smartphone and telecommunications equipment giant battles the United States government over whether it should be allowed to build the world's mobile networks, the company has been going to great lengths to present itself as open, transparent, and trustworthy. I don't believe any of those, but let's go ahead and continue. Saying that it has not always worked out. One reason is that certain simple questions about Huawei do not have simple answers. saying that and of course, the chief secretary of Huawei's board of directors spoke for more than 90 minutes to a small group of reporters on Thursday. The goal was to help explain the company's ownership after 2 American researchers wrote a report accusing Huawei of being misleading about the issue. And, when someone asks you who owns the company or, who heads the company, and you have to spend 90 minutes to kind of, sort of, maybe clear that up, not looking good for you. Now, the explanation boiled down to this. On paper, he said, Huawei is owned by a labor union that solicits donations from employees when their colleagues have health problems and the like. The union also supervises the company's basketball club, Mr. Jiang said. So Huawei is owned by a labor union that solicits donations from employees when their colleagues have health problems. And as the article continues, naturally, it's a little bit more complicated. And by the way, this coming to you from the New York Times. Naturally, it's a bit more complicated. Huawei's ownership is a murky matter because the company has never, in more than 3 decades of existence, sold shares to the public. The firm says that it is entirely owned by its employees and that no outside organizations, including any affiliated with the Chinese government, own shares. Again, without that transparency, without that actually verifying that the Chinese government does not have a controlling stake in the company, you have to take them at their word. And that's always hard to do with a company such as Huawei. But these assurances have never quite dispelled American officials' suspicion that Beijing and the Communist Party are somehow pulling the strings. Top American officials have also been alarmed by the new Chinese laws that require companies to assist in national intelligence work. That one's also interesting to me because here in the United States, we have very much the same thing where Apple has been very adamant and outspoken against the American government's ability to confiscate and search its users' data. And of course, you get into this whole legal jurisdiction of, well, who owns the servers and what happens when the data is on the server. Even though the data that you are using is between the end user and, let's say, Apple, what if it's rerouted through a server that is owned by, Comcast, and Comcast has an agreement with the U.S. government that the U.S. government can, snoop on any information that goes through their servers, even though you never made a deal with Comcast and Comcast had nothing to do with you wanting to play your app on your phone. Does that give the U.S. government the right to snoop on what it is you're doing on your phone? That's a question that keeps coming up. And so it's not just the Chinese government. I want to make that perfectly clear. Be suspicious of everyone when it comes to technology. There you go. So Huawei showed reporters on Thursday that what it described as evidence of its independence, a big blue book. Because who doesn't have a big blue book? Kept behind glass and under lock and key in a drab white room at the company's headquarters in Shenzhen, a southern Chinese city. Kind of weird. Within its 10 volumes are said to be the names of all Huawei employees who hold restricted phantom shares in the company. Proof, the company says, that no piece of Huawei is owned by the Chinese government. And as they say, this too is not as simple as it seems. Although it does not sound simple, to say that it's just a single blue book under lock and key that no one can look at and no one can thumb through. And for something like phantom shares, where I'm not exactly up to date on my corporate jargon, but I've never really heard of phantom shares being a thing. But here we are. Over the past year, Washington's long-simmered distrust towards Huawei, the world's leading maker of equipment that powers cell phone networks, has morphed into an all-out assault on the company, which we covered. That was one of our first article, or an article that we read about last year, was that, how do you put this? The American government was very anti-free market when it came to Huawei entering the market. The U.S. government leaned heavily on Comcast, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile, the cell phone carriers that you all know and love. Each one of them was about to make a deal with Huawei to bring Chinese-made and run phones into the United States market. But the government leaned on them, put pressure on them, and essentially said, don't you dare. And every one of them pulled out of their respective deals, and Huawei was not able to get a foothold into the American market, even though they have footholds in almost every other market around the world. In the United States, maybe that's why Huawei isn't a household name. So there you go. And as the article said, now we're kind of an all-out assault against the company. Now, Huawei and its chief financial officer are facing criminal charges in the United States of related to theft of trade secrets and violations of sanctions of Iran. We just talked about that. American officials have urged other governments to bar mobile carriers from using Huawei's gear and their next-gen wireless networks, arguing that oceans of sensitive data could be exposed to Chinese intelligence gathering. All of this really falls on almost deaf ears. And hey, we're going to read that in just a second. Thank you, Chatter. But yeah, all this kinds of falls on deaf ears because we've seen that whenever networks are built out with, with American government in mind, or Australian government, or the UK government, or the German government, or what have you, really any government realizes the importance of data and being able to monitor that data. Of course, the initial reaction is, oh, we do it for national security purposes. But even beyond that, just being able to detect threats before they actually become a viable threat, or to snoop on, just gather information about other partners and what's happening. It's a very important asset. So they don't want the Chinese to do it because I'm sure that they would rather do it themselves. I completely believe that. Now, again, this, and before we go any further, one of our kind chatters was actually able to dig this up. Phantom stocks, which is what Huawei said they are solely owned by their employees who own phantom stocks. Phantom stock is a contractual agreement between a corporation and recipient of phantom shares that bestow upon the grantee the right to a cash payment at a designated time or in association with a designated event in the future, which payment is to be in an amount tied to the market value of an equivalent number of shares, I'm sure. So essentially, I'm sure as you work for Huawei, they issue shares as kind of like their bonus. So every employee that works for Huawei will be issued these, and the longer they stick with Huawei, the more shares they get, and so on and so forth. Makes sense. They're kind of like shares, but you can't really do with them as you please. They are still owned by the company itself. Gotcha. Thank you, Chatter. Okay. All that being said, we continue on with the article. To counter claims that it's opaque and secretive, Huawei recently reported quarterly financial results for the first time, and it has invited reporters from around the world to interview company leaders, including Ren Zhengfei, its powerful founder and chief executive. There you go. But to Huawei's critics, such gestures hardly put to rest the questions of whether the company is susceptible to Chinese state influence. Okay, and by the way, the article goes on for a bit more. We're not going to kind of dig through all of it, but we're going to go ahead, skip ahead, and then move on to the next article, saying that the researchers who wrote the report questioning Huawei's ownership say Huawei's virtual stock program has nothing to do with financing or control and is purely a profit-sharing incentive scheme. Mr. Jiang rejected the argument, saying that the holders of Huawei virtual shares bear the risk that their shares will decline in value and that they are entitled to a portion of the company's assets if it goes bankrupt. Still, he acknowledged on Thursday that it was unclear whether Huawei's efforts to explain all this would assuage any concerns in Washington, and he said, no matter what, they won't listen to you. Of course, this gets into the geopolitical landscape that we really don't excel at here at Computer America, but see what happens in China, see what happens in Russia, see what happens in a lot of Middle Eastern countries. What happens with the political landscape really dictates what the really dictates what the company landscape can really do. Obviously, the Chinese government does exert a lot of control over its infrastructure, over its people, over censorship, over the content that is created. There's no doubt that that the Chinese government holds a lot of sway here. It's just how much do they really own Huawei? And that's a question that's becoming more and more pertinent if you're wondering, why do we even care? Why do we even care? And it's because Huawei is, for better or worse, building out the 5G infrastructure that we've been talking about lately. They are like the number one go-to, cheapest, most effective 5G wireless antennas that you can buy. Therefore, they're, it's good to know where that information is going once it enters their network. There you go. So with that being said, let's go ahead and continue on. That was story number 3. Very, very interesting. And by the way, the New York Times, they write really, really extensive articles. Let's put it that way. Okay, now with that being said, let's go ahead and hit this one up because this one was yesterday, and it's something that on Tuesday, again, when we did the whole social media thing, we were discussing how much social media is a good thing, how much time on Facebook and Twitter in the, engaging in conversations, what are the benefits, what are the drawbacks, and overall, we kind of agree that it should be limited to some extent, and that's just social media. It's kind of related to this next article from the New York Times. Check it out here. We'll, again, have a link to it. But the New York Times says that the World Health Organization, the one that says vaccines are bad and, get the flu shot and Ebola is coming for you. Yeah, the World Health Organization says that limited or no screen time for children under 5. Limited to no screen time. And this is something that you should really scratch your head about, because I'm sure that you've been to a restaurant or you have kids yourself. Trust me, it's very easy to hand a 2 or 3-year-old your cell phone, turn on YouTube, and let them bounce from video to video, and let them entertain themselves. While you have dinner, or you're sitting at home, you turn on the TV, and the TV works as a pseudo babysitter. A lot of kids are getting a lot of screen time. And I don't even think that that's a new thing. I think kids growing up with television, that's something that almost everyone listening to the show, you probably grew up in front of a television. It's certainly common. But should it be common? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Let's check out this article. This is by Emily Rube, saying that in a new set of guidelines, the World Health Organization says that infants under 1 year old should not be exposed to electronic screens, and that children between the ages of 2 and 4 should not have more than 1 hour of sedentary screen time each day. Let me repeat that. Under 1, no screens. 2 to 4, 1 hour maximum each day. I don't know what they say about 28-year-olds, but I'm sure I'm probably over that as well. Unfortunate. So, limiting, in some cases, eliminating screen time for children under the age of 5 results in healthier adults, the organization, a United Nations health agency, announced on Wednesday. So this is all for the development of kids. It's not, of course, for the safety of kids, but increased development for the kids. But of course, taking away iPads and other electronic devices is only part of the solution. Children under 5 should also get more exercise and sleep in order to develop better habits that will stave off obesity and diseases in adolescence and adulthood, the guidelines said. I think that's a key part right there. Obviously, we're going to dig a bit further and see, kind of where they're coming from. But I think that's the big part where if you're just starting life, if you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and you start out year after year sitting in front of a TV or sitting in front of your phone or sitting around with a tablet, and you develop these habits of, sitting around and watching and learning and, really not physically moving, but your body gets accustomed to laying around and watching, that greatly puts you at risk for obesity and other horrible health problems that a sedentary lifestyle can lead to. And it's saying that, hey, when you're young, you form those habits, you start the habits, and obviously your habits can change over time, but it's a good way to start kids off right. And someone in the chat room said that I limited my kids' TV time, exception, Sesame Street, and later a Disney movie. So far, this article has not talked about anything content-wise, but it's saying the time in front of a screen is super important. And trust me, we've all seen those parents that will sit and let their kid have unlimited access to a phone, a tablet, whatever. I'm sure that you have friends and family that let their kid, have their own tablet when they're at home. That might not be the best thing. And I think that's really the difference between kids today and kids of 10, 15, 20 years ago, is that kids can have a TV screen essentially in their hand that they can walk anywhere with and sit down and just kind of veg out, There you go. They're saying that, and they have a quote here from Dr. Tedros, he's the Director General of the World Health Organization, saying that, quote, achieving health for all means doing what is best for health right from the beginning of people's lives. Early childhood is a period of rapid development and a time when family lifestyle patterns can be adapted to boost health gains. There you go. And obviously, they say as previous generations worried about the impact of radios and television, researchers today are studying the impact of screen time, which has become a shorthand for the amount of time spent in front of TVs, computers, smartphones, digital tablets, video games, on brain development and overall health. But there's limited data on the short and long-term effects because, hey, this is new territory. This is something that kids today are having to deal with that, kids of 10, 15, 20 years ago, they never had to compete with this. Now, the National Institute of Health has funded a $300 million project known as the ABCD study for the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study. I like that, ABCD. Which hopes to show how brain development is affected by a range of experiences, including substance use, concussions, and screen time. But the study is tracking children ages 9 to 10 into young adulthood. And the data is, we're just starting to get it. So, as I said, the article is pretty long. We're not going to go through all of it, and we're probably going to skip on over. But let's read the very end, the cap off here. And they have another quote. What we really need to do is bring back play for children. This is about making the shift from sedentary time to playtime while protecting sleep. And I'm sure a lot of you out there listening who are not under 5 years old, I'm sure you have made the conscious decision to sacrifice sleep for sedentary time. And the problem is that while it may be relaxing and enjoyable, sedentary time, as in laying around watching TV or sitting around on your computer, is no replacement for a good quality sleep. Really have to make a conscious effort to do that. And again, these are all recommendations from the World Health Organization, one that is really trying to fight the obesity epidemic and trying to get health for everyone. And they're up against some of the most addicting technology we have ever created. So probably not the easiest thing to do. Everyone, that was story number 3. Story number 4. I like this one. I like this one because, you know what? I like Tesla. That's a very controversial thing to say. But Elon Musk and Tesla, what they do is that they take something that's, how do you put this? Cars are just cars. Cars were an industry. They're very well established. You went to a dealership, you bought one, so on and so forth. And then Tesla comes along. They turned the electric car into something that people actually wanted, and they sold directly to consumers so they could bypass a lot of the dealerships and things like that. They're very disruptive, and I like disruptive technology. So when we come back, everyone, and that's what the music in the background means. When we come back, we're going to talk about Tesla will begin selling its own in-house insurance within a month. That's right, a car manufacturer selling insurance. Everyone, we'll be right back. More Computer America right after this. Everyone, stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour, and everyone out there, thank you for continuing on with us. If you missed any part of the conversation so far, we're doing computer and technology news. And wherever podcasts are heard, simply search Computer America and we should pop right up. Very, very simple. And we really, really appreciate it. So everyone out there, hey, welcome back into the program. We were just about to get into this article about Tesla. You know them. They make the cool cars. Tesla will begin selling its own in-house insurance in a month. But even without reading the article or knowing what's coming, I bet you I can take a good guess, and that's, hey, you probably have to have a Tesla if you want Tesla insurance. There you go. Now, Tesla released its Q1 2019 earnings on Wednesday, and despite having a significant slowdown from the previous quarter, the company remains confident that it will meet its ambitious production goals for the year. And by the way, if you weren't paying attention to that, they lost something like a couple $100 million. But they said that they expected that because they were upgrading their manufacturing plant and getting Gigafactory 1 online. So despite significant challenges with the battery module line at Gigafactory 1 in Nevada and later with our general assembly line in Fremont, Tesla managed to deliver nearly 140,000 Model 3 vehicles in 2018. That trend continued through Q1 2019, with the electric sedan outselling the nearest competitor by 60%. They're doing good. People want the cars. It's just a matter of, can Tesla, the company, actually make them and push them out the door? Now, the company expects its production for Model 3s to continue to grow thanks to its Fremont facility and expects a sustained capacity of 7,000 vehicles per week by the end of the year. That would do a good job of getting cars on the road. Now, the Gigafactory Shanghai plant is expected to reach its full production potential by the end of the year and boasts a capital spend per unit of capacity. No idea what that means. That's less than half of what we see at Fremont facility Model 3 line. That's 50%. Our internal forecasts are actually better than that. So he's hopeful, but Elon Musk is nothing if not hopeful. Now to again get to the matter at hand, here we go. North American Model S customers. So Model S is Model E, Model X, Model Y, Model S customers will soon have the opportunity to buy Tesla's in-house insurance, saying that the program, which is previously rolled out in Australia and Asia, seeks to provide a lower cost alternative to third-party insurance for the S, which is among the most expensive electric vehicles in the market. Saying, quote, "We are creating a Tesla insurance product," and this is what Elon Musk himself has confirmed. "We are hoping to launch that in about a month. We think it will be much more compelling than anything else out there." And it's interesting because, think about other car companies. You can't buy insurance from Ford. You can't buy it from Honda. You can't buy it from Mercedes. None of them offer insurance. And it really goes to show that classic got you question of, well, especially with like self-driving cars and who pays for the insurance, does the car manufacturer pay the insurance? Does the owner of the car pay for that? And it seems like time and time again, Tesla is stepping up and saying, we believe in our technology, we believe in our car, our product, and we will be the one to take the risk for people driving it, or in some cases, the cars driving themselves. So the article goes into a bit more about the financials of Tesla, which I'm really not all that concerned about because numbers are numbers, but I just thought it was interesting that Tesla would soon be selling its own insurance to Model S owners. Check that out. Okay, let's get into something a bit more fun. You know what? And this is fun. Just the other day, out shopping for groceries, wasn't paying attention, and my cart, after taking all the stuff out, putting it into the trunk, turning around for 2 seconds, and the cart started running down the parking lot. Very common if you've seen any Geico commercials, then hey, I'm sure you know the exact situation. It's not a good feeling, and you definitely don't want to hurt other people's cars. You don't want to ding anything up, and worst of all, it can be expensive. So, what happens? Ford, you know them? Ford's futuristic shopping cart, which if you're watching the video portion, you can see a picture of it here. Who knew that they were in the shopping cart business? They say that they can brake on their own. That's right. The same technology that goes into your new Ford could go into your new shopping cart. Saying that a sensor detects objects like parked cars to prevent runaway collisions. Ford has been applying its automotive expertise to creating some amusing and practical devices like a conveyor belt bed and noise-canceling doghouse, which they have links to them in the article here if you want to check those out. Why the heck not? And by the way, we're going to go ahead and play the video right here. And yeah, there you go. The self-braking trolley, saying it's a self-braking shopping cart based on pre-collision assist technology that's designed to prevent any supermarket mayhem. If your kid uses it as a skateboard or if it runs away in the parking lot, a sensor can detect objects in the way and bring it to a smooth stop. There you go. Obviously, Ford is blaming your kids for shopping cart mishaps, which seems a bit unfair. But yeah, saying that's fair enough. But adults are just as likely to let a loaded cart roll away into a parked F-150 while they fumble for the keys. So the video, which we're showing, again, if you're watching that, shows the system working to perfection, smoothly braking to prevent accidents with stacked fruit, hapless shoppers, and a Mustang. Suffice to say, this device isn't coming to a grocery store near you, but yeah. There you go. Saying that it's not coming to a store near you, considering the frequency of which shopping carts are of course, let go. Still, it's a fun prototype and an uncanny piece of marketing for Ford. Very much marketing, but I like the idea. And I wish everyone was equipped with these things. Kind of cute. Okay. There you go. Story number 5. And let's go ahead. Story number 6. lots of articles from Engadget. Why don't we go ahead, switch it up? Let's talk about... All right, this one confused me. So I apologize ahead of time if I'm not clear on this, but it's could be a little heady. Everyone, Ars Technica, great publication. If you haven't checked them out, highly recommend it. John Timmer saying radioactivity detected from a half-life of once every trillion universes. One of the ways, and yeah, I think we can get through this. One of the ways that we measure the age of the Earth is using the half-life of uranium. Fun fact. With a half-life of around 4 billion years, your typical atom of uranium only has even odds of having decayed during Earth's entire history. But it only takes a few hundred atoms to up the odds for us to see enough decay to be able to accurately measure the age of something, even though the decay itself may be rare. In fact, with enough atoms, it's possible to measure radioactive decay from events that have a half-life longer than the universe's age. Interesting. It's possible to measure radioactive decays from events that have a half-life longer than the universe's age. Interesting. Now researchers are using a tank full of 2 tons of liquid xenon put together to detect dark matter to identify the rarest decay ever detected. The Xenon 1T detector, which you can see the picture of there, it looks like a giant cage with copper tubing that, of course, has the liquid xenon in it. It picked up some xenon atoms being transformed into tellurium, an event with a half-life measured at 1.8 times 10 to the 22nd power years, or about 1 trillion times the age of the universe. That's right. So, with that being said, what's the point of having 2 tons of liquid xenon in the first place? Xenon 1T was set up to detect a different but also extremely rare event, a dark matter particle bumping into one of the xenon atoms. This would impart enough energy to the atom to allow the event to be picked up by the detectors that monitor the xenon tank, and for this to work, however, the tank had to be shielded from any event that could also create a signal in the monitoring system. As a result, it was set up deep underground at Italy's Gran Sasso facility, and any potential radioactive contaminants were eliminated from the liquid xenon. So if you're wondering why they were doing this in the first place, turns out to detect dark matter. That seems to be like the number one thing that these scientists are trying to do. Of course, these precautions weren't enough to allow a dark matter signal to emerge from the data, but the same precautions also make it possible to detect extremely rare nuclear transformations occurring among the xenon atoms. So, with that being said, as is usual in these sorts of experiments, the researchers calculated the expected background based on what they knew about the hardware, and then they looked to see whether there was a signal that diverged from the background. In this case, the signal was 4.4 standard deviations from the background, just short of a decisive confirmation of the detection event. This was from 1 year of taking data, so it's safe to say that the precision of these instruments will go up dramatically. Here's the summation of all this. Here's why it matters. There were enough detections to calculate that the half-life of this transformation, which produced a value of 1.8 times 10 to the 22nd, or about 1 trillion times the life of the universe. This was the first direct measurement of this particular transformation, and one of only 2 cases where we've confirmed that a double electron capture takes place. And for all of you who maybe dropped out of science, whatever science class you do, scientific notation, that's 1.8, and so it's 1.8 with 22 zeros after it. That's a lot of zeros. That's a lot of zeros. And again, as I said, about 1 trillion times the life of the known universe. So, yeah. Very, very rare and very interesting when these highly sensitive experiments take place, the data that can actually come from them, even if you didn't actually intend it. So yeah, that was more science and technology, but it is, of course, high technology as well. Definitely check that one out. All right, let's bring it back down to earth. Although that one was buried underground, so it couldn't get much more down to earth than that. How about this one? Peloton. Peloton makes cycling training. Training devices. They're bikes. You sit on them, you sweat and you sweat and you sweat, and you watch this giant screen. Well, the problem is there's software on the back end of it. And why is it a problem? Well, check this out. This one from Engadget saying that Peloton users stuck with quote-unquote terrible tunes following a licensing lawsuit. That's right, licensing music. It's a pain in the butt, and turns out sometimes companies, they just don't want to do it. Connected exercise bike maker Peloton was hit with a $150 million lawsuit last month for playing unlicensed music, and now its customers are feeling the fallout. Owners of the machine, which costs up to $4,000 each, have taken to the internet to complain about the poor music selection now accompanying their $468 annual workout membership. Ladies and gentlemen, oh man, products as a service. When you have to pay another $500 so that your exercise bike has content, maybe just pull out your iPhone, but I digress. The Verge cites one Peloton user, Ali, who says that random songs are plopped in the middle of an otherwise consistent theme playlist. Meanwhile, the Peloton subreddit brings up dozens of complaints about the service's subpar music quality. Quote, I'm enjoying rides much less than before. While another said, quote, I bought this bike because I like to ride to good music, and now I'm forced to ride to terrible tunes. Of course, music is an entirely subjective preference, and of course, perhaps some writers would be quite content with 2 Pink songs and 2 Now That's What I Call Music tracks lambasted by one dissatisfied customer, but it does seem that Peloton knows something's up, saying that, and of course, one person commented, quote, had anyone noticed that it's like instructors are trying to convince you it's good when we both know it's not as good? They seem to make a lot of comments like, this is a band you've never heard of, but it's awesome, or whoever knew blank could sound like this. It's awkward. It is awkward. So according to Peloton, the company has decided to remove songs identified in the aforementioned lawsuit, and customers may notice this in the near term, but assured users that its agreement in place with all of what are known as major publishers, recording labels, and performing rights organizations. So, hey, let's just go ahead and wrap this up here. Music licensing is an ongoing headache for numerous third-party services, from game developers to streaming sites. However, the industry is trying to find a wide-reaching solution. Legislation such as the Music Modernization Act, passed last year, will help, but until everyone is on the same page, companies such as Peloton will have to find workarounds to keep its high-paying user base happy. And, this is something that we really have to focus on. I mean, we all know it's a problem, but with the advent of things like live streaming or products as a service, being able to put music into them, it's never been easier to distribute music. It's just how much should artists be paid? Let's say if, even though no one's actually paying for it, but their music is listened to tens of millions of times, across the world. How do they get compensated for that when no one's really paying for the music? And before it was, hey, you sell your records, you sell your CDs. Nowadays, though, you don't do that. You put your music up on a streaming service, or you make, you make partnerships with third-party brands and things like that. But overall, no one's really buying their music anymore. How do we fix this? Because in a lot of ways, I don't know, the people who use it are just consumers themselves. They aren't really trying to resell the music. They're trying to resell content around the music. It's definitely a tough question. And something needs to be done about content licensing. So we will have to wait and see. But with that being said, let's switch it up here. Let's talk about... Okay, how about this one? Airbnb. They have been getting a lot of flack because obviously Airbnb, they're a service that lets you rent out your home or your bedroom to people who are visiting or traveling, and you get paid for it. They get paid through the app, or they get to trash your place completely scot-free, and you're on the hook for cleaning up the damages and whatnot. Well, despite whatever Airbnb's original connotation was, they now may be getting into making TV shows. That's right, traveling shows. What better way to promote the idea that, hey, Airbnb is your number one place to go if you want to travel and travel more frequently. So, this comes to us from Engadget, Mr. John Fingus, saying Airbnb may create original shows to spark the travel bug. It could put you on destinations and profit when you go. Saying that Airbnb might not be content with hoping that you'll book a stay during your next vacation. It may want to make that vacation more appealing in the first place. Reuters sources Airbnb say that Airbnb hopes to create these television shows. And let's go ahead and hit this real quick. Okay. So the strategy, previously unreported, is crucial for the company, which is privately valued at $31 billion and is gearing up for an initial public offering of stock expected next year. Airbnb must distinguish itself from Booking.com, Expedia, and other fierce competitors and consolidate the travel industry where apartment renting services are increasingly common. Not so simple. And they say that Brian wants to create a studio. The mentality, let's do shows, let's do films, because we want to be travel everything. And I kind of like this. I'm sure that a lot of people out there have checked out, let's say, the Discovery Channel and all the different travel shows. And I think it may be past the heyday of the travel show. But being able to see all the different places on your TV and say, wow, I really want to go there. Wow, I really want to try that. It's still very interesting. And I think the more varied kind of content you can get from that, the better off Airbnb will be, because they will be the place that you'll stay. You know, their service is the one that you will use as you travel from country to country to do this kind of thing. Think of it as like a product demonstration, but in the form of a travel TV series. For at least 3 years, Airbnb has batted around ideas for creating or licensing miniseries and documentaries about travel, and shows featuring Airbnb home guests and hosts. One of the people said it has also discussed working with studios as well as starting its own. So yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and kind of stop that one there, but I thought that was interesting that Airbnb is looking into creating its own television shows. Pretty cool. Okay. I think I have time for one last one, and I really wanted to get this particular story in as soon as I find it. Here we go. Last story of the day, probably. It has to do with Fox. Obviously, everyone out there, no Avengers spoilers, but Fox is killing it when it comes to making movies and or Fox, I should say, but Disney. Disney is killing it when it comes to content creation and that kind of thing. Well, looks like Comcast is trying to throw Disney a bone. Comcast is in talks about selling its 30% stake in Hulu to none other than Disney. And this was according to a report from CNBC this morning. The discussions are still in early stages. Comcast is considering whether the timing is right for sale, as Hulu's valuation could still increase over time. But if Comcast is less certain about Hulu's future, it may want to unload its minority stake now. Then use the cash to pay down its other debt, like the $39 billion acquisition of Sky. Yeah, they pay a lot of money for Sky, but there you go. The report weighs the broader set of pros and cons associated with the potential deal, noting that retaining the stake could give Comcast a bargaining chip with Disney further down the road, among other advantages. But it's also unclear how much Hulu aligns with Comcast's long-term plans, and of course, they are considering their own streaming service in 2020. It hurts me. It hurts me to know that Comcast is planning its own streaming service. There are too many streaming services as it is. So in addition, Hulu is expected to generate losses and won't turn profit until 2024, Disney has said. It also plans to expand Hulu outside the US, which is an added cost, a huge added cost, because every one of those countries outside the United States, Canada, UK, the Middle East, Asia, Australia, you have to fight for every one of those content licensing deals. And it's a very tedious and expensive and legal fraught process. Of course, Disney today has majority ownership of Hulu following the acquisition of 21st Century Fox 30% stake. The latter saw Disney picking up AT&T's 9.5% stake, and AT&T's deal valued Hulu at $15 billion. That means that Comcast's stake is around $5 billion. Yeah, there you go. Up until recently, Comcast was not looking to sell its ownership in Hulu, but of course, it's natural that Disney and Comcast would still be having an ongoing dialogue about this, given Disney's ambitions. Of course, Comcast today provides 17% of Hulu's content, and it doesn't plan to remove that content anytime soon. And I think that's really a big part of it, where Comcast isn't looking to completely divorce itself from Hulu, or at least the content-wise, because, hey, if your programming or if your streaming service isn't going to be available until 2020, people still want to watch that. And you know that you still have a bargaining chip to play here against Disney. Being 1 in every 5 shows on Hulu is Comcast, then, hey, you're in a pretty good, position to barter. But at the same time, you don't want to be a long-term part of Hulu. That seems to be Comcast's clear message here. They definitely want to be a part of Hulu. It's just not forever, and probably only through the end of next year. Disney has been on somewhat of a spending spree. They've been buying things like crazy, and don't worry, their investments have been paying off very handsomely. It's just a matter of, does Disney want to keep spending when at this point they really don't have to? If they make Comcast keep their, a good chunk of Hulu's shares, there's nothing. Obviously, Disney has the majority shares in Hulu, so they can do whatever the heck they want. But at the same time, they keep Comcast invested in making sure that Hulu continues to be a good investment for both of them. As far as business strategy goes, I really don't see Comcast divesting themselves from Hulu because Disney won't let them. Disney won't agree to any kind of sale, and unless someone else wants to pick up their shares from Comcast, which maybe you could find a third party to jump in on this, but overall it seems like Disney has so far picked up everyone else's shares. And it might turn out that the first ones to sell out to the mouse may have been the best ones, or at least the best decision. So everyone, that's about all the time we have for today. Trust me, it has flown on by. And some of the articles that we did not get to include Walmart is, of course, building its own AI-based store concept. And it's, of course, open to the public. So think Amazon Go, but not as Amazon Go-esque, but still Walmart. Others include the first laser radio paves the way for ultra-fast Wi-Fi. Didn't get a chance to get to that. And last one, we should probably mention real quick, the three-prong power adapters from Apple, the AC wall plug adapters. They were 3 prongs. They were produced for iOS devices between 2003 and 2010. They have a recall. So there's a risk of electrical shock. Everyone be careful. Check it out if you know you have a 3-pronged Apple adapter. and hey, maybe get those replaced. But I should say only in the UK. So there you go. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully you had fun and you learned something along the way. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, where we have none other than Nathan Evans. He is a resident correspondent here, Pop Zara Magazine. It's always a lot of fun with him, and check that out. Until next time, everyone, have a great day. Thank you, and check out computeramerica.com. Bye, everyone.